Introduction to the Abyss Return. Lu Ning opened her eyes and saw a strange mountain villa, accompanied by people who also felt inexplicable. The story begins from here. Resurrection is not an easy miracle to pray for. When the 8th morning of the villa arrived, Lu Ning knew she had to continue and would definitely continue. This is a journey record of a group of deceased attempting to return from the abyss. Micro-horror element, infinite flow, not reinforced. The protagonist, Lu Ning, sometimes switches other people's perspectives, but the protagonist is Lu Ning, emphasis, the female lead has no CP. Roughly speaking, the next book, it's okay not to read it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The new work is generally an endless stream story without any reinforcement, nor is it a legendary tale of becoming a god. The details will be explained when the first volume ends. The so-called protagonist halo is when the protagonist can reach the end, there is nothing else, and others may not even be able to reach the end. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to put them forward. I will adjust them in the following chapters depending on the situation. You may see all kinds of supporting role that you can't remember, so don't remember them. If I can't remind you in the writing where this person appeared and what they did before, it's my problem, please raise it. It is purely a work of interest, and due to the type, updates will not be fast, at most it will remain stable. The world, events, groups, and characters involved in this book are all fictional and unrelated to reality. Finally, thank you to everyone who pointed it in, as well as readers who are willing to provide feedback. Regarding future discussions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is the author. Hello to all readers of this book. As of the publication of this chapter, the second volume, The Pursuer of the Scriptures, has been completed and is currently working on the third volume, so there is no need to worry about short-term updates, laughs, but I also noticed a problem. As the book friend 1609010426335559 said, thank you for your daily ticket support. The second volume uses a story background similar to COC, that is, Cthulhu's Call. The original intention of writing this book was to try various types of suspense, so similar situations will definitely occur in the future. However, Lu Ning in the second volume is undoubtedly a beginner, which brings about a problem, which is the review part of the discussion in the future. The characters in the story are more inclined towards PC, characters, rather than PL, players, and due to time constraints and character traits, there are few opportunities in the main text to provide space for a comprehensive review of the entire scene. But a major characteristic of COC is that not all puzzles may be solved, and the large number of branches in the entire scene cannot be fully unfolded. After all, most of the time we see from the perspective of one person. Therefore, there may be questions such as, why isn't this character left behind? Why hasn't the background of this thing been explained? The deadline is a fairly versatile answer, but I still want to make the story clearer. If you have any doubts or questions about the content of a certain volume, please raise them in the comments section. After accumulating a certain amount, I will hold a tea party to answer the questions in a different section. Of course, everything outside the section does not affect the main text. Thank you very much for keeping up with the current readers. New readers who can access this book are welcome to visit. No Visible Inch of Light, September 21, 2019. Listing remarks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So, this book quietly went on sale. Since its initial release in January, it has been 3 months with 3 volumes, and the progress has been normal. As this is the first time the article has been published, there may be some immature aspects in the writing and plot. Please forgive me. The VIP chapter will start from the interval of the third volume. Although there are coincidental factors involved, it is also the position I hope to take. Readers who have read the first 3 volumes and are still willing to continue reading would be greatly appreciated. Readers who have no intention of continuing believe that the complete content of the first 3 volumes is also easy to gather and disperse. As mentioned multiple times in the article, the following is an introduction to upgrading and gradually expanding the distribution center environment. Although many things will be solved in each scene of the volume, it is still necessary to make brief adjustments during the interval. Finally, there is bad news and good news. The bad news is that even though it has been listed recently, there have been no updates due to the busy schedule lately. I have been using save draft support, so it is more difficult to add it. So the good news is that for full attendance, there should be 4K updates every day. However, all of my previous saved manuscripts were for 3K chapters, so I started double-checking every day for May until I ran out of 3K manuscripts. So, the journey continued. 4.19 No visible inch sharpness. Tea Party Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is a clean white room, with a dark red round table placed in the center of the room, surrounded by 12 chairs arranged in a precise manner like a clock dial. So this is the venue for the tea party. As Lu Ning spoke, she sat down on the chair at 3 o'clock and a cup of vanilla tea immediately appeared on the table in front of her. Probably based on the different people sitting down, it will display drinks that meet their needs. Very considerate service. At 12 o'clock, Lien sat upright. In front of her was a glass filled with sparkling water, with half a lemon floating on the water and ice cubes and petals sinking to the bottom. Is it just the two of us? Maybe not, but we need an invitation. After all, you are the protagonist. Tea parties usually require the host to send an invitation before anyone comes, right? Lianjie seems to understand very well. Lu Ning picked up the vanilla tea and took a sip, the familiar taste relaxing her mind. So before that, let me explain the rules of the tea party. After all, it's a story like this, and the rules are quite important. Listen attentively. There are generally two types of invitations for tea parties, which are the tourists mentioned in the volume and the NPCs mentioned in the story. Although this may not be a good name, it is easy to understand. Among them, tourists will appear at the beginning, and NPCs can only be used as supplementary explanations for the plot. That is to say, like a witness in court, he can only attend when needed. It's like this, but what have you experienced before, Lianjie, to blurt out such a metaphor? Lien smiled and took a sip of her drink. The tea party is responsible for explaining some of the story backgrounds that cannot be explained in the plot. After all, the main perspective is with me, and many people are in an unknown state about what others have done. Well, even they may not be very clear about what I have done. He's a terrible protagonist. Therefore, this section is also necessary. However, the tea party does not occupy the main text and is precisely used to explain some issues that we will not discuss in the main text. Therefore, it is also a good time for the author to unleash their own water word count. You'll be hidden in the snow if you say that, Sister Lien. Anyway, I won't make an appearance in the future. Probably. Yes, the characters who did not appear in the competition will not have the chance to be invited again, so Lianjie only has this chance to be invited. Next is the fixed project of the tea party. That's just chatting. Including the QA section, any questions raised in this volume may be answered, provided that the plot is relevant. Although I think this section may be neglected for a while. But that's not the point. The key is still the fun of reviewing. Although there are still many things unclear about the me in the plot, the me here has a divine perspective. If you can't figure it out anymore, you can go and hit the wall. Therefore, as you can see, the characters in the tea party and the plot should not be confused. Please consider it as a relaxing spin-off. The tea party is held irregularly, so please do not expect it too much. Hello. Equals 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 at 7 o'clock, Lien sat down, and in front of her was a fruit juice drink made of a certain mixture of pineapple, orange, and apple juice. What exactly did you two discuss? It took so long. Probably. Where would it be better to start such a topic? Lu Ning's herbal tea has been replaced with a new one, and this time there are also exquisite pastries such as red bean buns available next to it, which are also provided according to the needs of the people on the seat. First of all, the content discussed in this tea club is 1 to 3 volumes. As free content, the tea party will also be free. If you are not interested in the mystery itself, it is okay to skip future tea parties. The first discussion is about the volume of Ghost Villa. Lu Ning raised her teacup and immediately, a projection of the villa appeared in the center of the round table. There aren't many doubts about the villa, are there? It's better to start with the rules of ghosts and monsters, suggested Yin Lian. Okay, there were originally 3 ghosts in the villa. The double ghost, the mirror ghost, and the invisible ghost. The killing methods of the 3 ghosts have already been provided in the main text. The double ghost originally existed in Mensal's manuscript, and after the 3-hour restriction is lifted, it will directly attach itself to the first person who comes into contact with the manuscript. If no one touches the manuscript throughout the process, this ghost will not be able to participate in the attack. Which means directly reducing the mortality rate by 1/3. It would be wrong for us to search everywhere instead. Ling Yan felt a bit depressed. Lu Ning nodded. This is the preferential treatment given to newcomers in the beginner scene, even if they are scared and don't do anything, there is still a 1/3 chance of survival. Compared to the later scenes, it's like opening a back door. But is it possible to do nothing? Yin Lian sighed. Once the existence of ghosts and monsters is confirmed, we will lose our conventional judgment. In all unknown situations, people will spontaneously search for everything that may help them survive. What is the possibility that Mensal's manuscript will not be discovered at all? Besides, the guide is clearly displayed there. A moment of silence. It's over. Let's continue to explain. The other 5 ghosts correspond to the 5 people who died before. Like the previous ghosts, these ghosts actually have their own weaknesses. The first dead man turned into a ghost called Black Mist, which can freely penetrate anywhere, and the killing restriction is indoor. At the same time, there was also the translation of a substitute ghost possessed, who became a wriggling ghost in the wall. The killing restriction was that only one person existed within 3 meters. Later on, Yang Na, who died, became a shadow ghost, and the killing restriction was that she could only attack moving targets. Among the 2 people who died the next day, Chersong became an possessed ghost. The possessed target was me, which would form a ghost face behind my head. The restriction on killing was to gaze at it. The last one, Pang Lingling, is a ghost furniture that can drive existing items in the house to launch attacks, including corpses. The restriction is that the body must be hidden in one of the items, and the control distance is only 15 meters. Once the hidden item is damaged, it will be eliminated. In theory, if we knew these conditions in the story, survival wouldn't be so difficult, Yin Lian said. You can even live many more people. With a flick of Lu Ning's finger, the pattern in the center of the table enlarged a bit. Besides that, it's the background story we can know. Yin Lianjia, does that have any profound meaning? It's a rough reminder of the origin of the ghosts and monsters, Yin Lian said. There must be some problems with the remnants of the cult in the manuscript. Tang Yuanzhen's research on that generally won't have a good ending. In all the diaries, Tang Yuanzhen's health condition is deteriorating, so it's probably not only for family issues, but also to study the secrets of the manuscript with him. Joseph, out of his desire for Tang's possession of secret treasures, first secretly eliminated Tang Yuanzhen through a manuscript, and then he wanted to take action against Tang Yuexin. However, Tang Yuexin discovered Joseph's conspiracy for some reasons, but she was also forced into a desperate situation at the same time. She used her learned secret technique in the basement to transform herself into a fierce ghost for revenge. However, Li Gui did not possess the discernment of life. Tang Yuexin's transformation into a Li Gui killed all the people in this villa, and a loyal servant was later transformed into a Li Gui to continue guarding the villa. There is no record of what happened afterwards, however, from the conflict between the mirror ghost and the stand-in ghost, Tang Yuexin also harbors a strong hatred towards manuscripts that have harmed the entire family, and only such negative emotions will not be lost after being transformed into a fierce ghost. Lu Ning added, only the invisible ghost cooperates with the stand-in ghost, and the mirror ghost almost always acts alone. If someone can take advantage of this, they may also be able to avoid many deaths. Indeed, Ling Yan recalled, many times we were the ones who panicked first, and the number of times your golden statue was branded was also wasted. The double ghost also made good use of its information advantage. With a flick of her finger, Lu Ning's image returned to the evening of the third day in the main house, before the two were killed with the cooperation of the invisible ghost and the double ghost. At this point, Pang Lingling was already playing the role of a double ghost. She had interacted with most of the people present by pretending to be mentally unstable, which was completely in line with my protective measures of using the prayer gold statue to imprint everyone in the afternoon. In the end, she replaced Huang Peng in front of everyone. At this time, there were not many people with residual imprints on her body, such as me. Should we say it was intentional or unintentional? This luck has determined that the ultimate survivor will be you rather than Ling Yan, Yin Lian said. Is there such a thing? Ling Yan was a bit surprised. On the last night, the invisible ghost gave up killing Uncle Xing and instead pursued the two of you. The first person caught was Lu Ning, and it was at that time that the imprint blocked an attack, forcing the invisible ghost to let go. When Ling Yan threw the pen over, Lu Ning was not in a holding state. It was only after picking up the pen on the ground that the handover of the pen was considered complete. I see. Ling Yan nodded, so it was actually her who saved Lu Ning. Aren't you angry? Lu Ning asked, you could have survived. When I made the decision to throw the pen to you, I never regretted it. And after that, she was surrounded by the people led by my corpse with mirrors. If she didn't throw the pen to you, it could also be because she had her throat cut by the mirror ghost, and you were killed by the invisible ghost. Xing Shu didn't have time to escape the burning out of the entire team. Ling Yan's final choice also saved the last one among us, Yin Lian said. It's luck, and it's also an inevitable result. Ling Yan picked up the cup and took a sip, then leaned back on the chair. It's really a nostalgic taste. In short, although the curtain call has come, we can still feel such a beautiful time, and it's not worth the trip. Is there any puzzle left in Ghost Mountain Villa? Yin Lian asked. Probably not anymore. It seems like we should also welcome the next batch of guests. Lu Ning stood up and lightly patted her palm twice, and two people suddenly appeared at the positions of 6 and 1. This is the tea party. Yin Luo looked up at the layout here and then turned his gaze to Lu Ning. I was really surprised that you invited me. It's not surprising, because you are already someone who is semi-independent of Lu Ning's storyline. All the information we three have combined can form the majority of the truth in the second volume, so you must be here. Cheng Wuling picked up her coffee and took a light sip. However, it's quite an interesting experience to meet people who have no connection in the main text again. Yin Lian reached out to Cheng Wuling beside her and said, nice to meet you. I'm Yin Lian. Cheng Wuling. The one who snatched the scene after you. This joke also made everyone else laugh. Lu Ning's actions were indeed too exhausting. Yin Luo's drink was honey lemon tea, which was still steaming hot, and she didn't rush to drink it. However, the whole situation was taken and time estimation was wrong. In fact, we were all at a disadvantage overall. Moreover, Cheng Wuling directly invalidated the function of the explorer faction, and there were only two of them who couldn't stir up much waves. Lu Ning spread her hands, but from my perspective, the whole process was mostly shrouded in mist, and many things were not very clear. And we must have missed a lot of clues, right? There are quite a few. Cheng Wuling grabbed a piece of sugar and threw it into the cup. I didn't want you to investigate anything, but basically didn't let you investigate. After all, for most people, who would go and explore clues that are not true or false if there are obvious problems in front of them. So, what are the disadvantages of your camp? Before the implementation of the silent plan, the hidden man camp cannot directly attack tourists. The only ones they can dispatch are those with defective gene replicates, all of whom can be killed with just 1 or 2 shots. In addition, the only bus that we could command among the first generation of servants was the one that was lying underground in the hospital, one responsible for isolating communication in the mountains, one eating and transforming people in the church, one watching the servant eggs in the forest unable to move, and the other being a guard of UFOs in the lake. There is another one that only starts when someone leaves Donma. I have to take the trouble to guide you to their hunting range in order to leverage their power. Is that why you made the second generation of servants? Asked Lu Ning. Yes, the production of the second generation servants is also difficult, and the scene cannot be so easy for you to use high-damage subordinates. So I chose to give up all the killing power and switch to functionality, which was only then that I managed to make a few usable ones. Cheng Wuling took a sip of coffee. In addition, our task description clearly informs us that there are supernatural associations in the city, and in fact, the top combat forces there are basically equivalent to the star spirits we ultimately release here. In other words, there is a high possibility that our identity exposure will be directly resolved. But do you have an intelligence advantage? That's right, the weak power corresponds to the intelligence advantage. Most of the information related to stars and spirits can be directly obtained from the UFO. In addition, the Life Science Research Institute is mostly our people. With these 2 strongholds, we can try to hide our identities as much as possible in the early stage. This is probably the balance between factions. Lu Ning now naturally understands that she wasted a lot of time investigating irrelevant matters before, but if the Guardian faction is directly found, it is likely to be destroyed by Tan Chong and Qin Shui. So let's talk about camp missions. Guardians need to complete either releasing the Star Spirit or completing the Silent Plan, and Donma will fall completely. If both are completed, those who died in the scene can also be resurrected under favorable conditions. Pursuers, on the other hand, are exactly the opposite. Preventing the Star Spirit from being released and protecting Donma from being erased all need to be completed. After all, their number is half of the total number of tourists this time. And explorers need to learn 2 secret techniques to achieve at least one personal goal. Lu Ning reached out and projected a pattern of Donma on the table. I think the most important line is related to the Frost Day celebration. Perhaps, Yin Luo looked at Cheng Wuling. If we don't take action, the Frost Day celebration is indeed a very important line. Cheng Wuling nodded. There is an independent judgment system inside the UFO, and you can also become the main brain. It is it that talks to Lu Ning in the UFO. Its logical judgment is mechanical. Festivals like Frost Day celebrations, where large gatherings of people are mixed, are considered the best way to get off the phone. Therefore, even if we don't move at that time, the main brain will command servants and those inferior replicants to kidnap some tourists, which is also the main reason for missing people in recent years. What is the purpose of the kidnapping? Yin Lian asked. Recruiting genes. As the highest level of intelligent creatures on this planet, human genes are in the highest demand. High-quality genes will be directly eaten by servants and fed back to UFOs, while inferior ones will be screened, and most will be used to build armies in hospitals. The reason for doing this is that Xingling does not have an action carrier. Although the experiment of the Heavenly Court Sun has been successful, as the main brain responsible for overall planning, we will continue to follow the filing process to prevent the 2 carriers from being damaged and leaving no backup available. Cheng Wuling explained. Besides, the goal of Xingling is not to invade. An environment that cannot survive is of no value to them. The army and evidence of annihilation are only created for confidentiality in self-defense, although it sounds ridiculous. So the mission is said to be a release, Yin Luo suddenly realized. They were forced to be imprisoned here. Cheng Wuling nodded and took a sip of coffee. Lu Ning continued to speak. The next question is about my covert human task. Firstly, it should be noted that this task can be checked for completion on my phone, so I have made progress on all of my covert human tasks. During the rest days, I also checked the progress of my personal tasks. It was at that time that I knew the task of leaving only myself as a covert human had been completed. Well, probably at that time I knew I wasn't a secretive person, Cheng Wuling nodded. This can also reverse the problem with Lu Chang'an. When we went up the mountain to search for the cave where the monster lived, we once got lost, and at that time, Lu Chang'an was caught by the monster on the mountain. However, the people who arrived later. I was on the mountain at that time, and the monster you saw urgently brought me over, said Cheng Wuling. Okay, you obtained Lu Chang'an's phone and used some probably unpleasant methods to pry out his identity secret. Then you came up with the idea of using his identity as a hidden person to infiltrate our internal team. Lu Chang'an's replica can be made by sending it to the hospital. You don't have to eat one person to make a replica, do you? It's enough to extract genes, such as blood and hair, but filling in the UFO gene bank requires a complete person. Subsequently, under your arrangement, Lu Chang'an guided the actions of the independent trio and even stabbed Yuan Shi in the back in the hospital. The body was locked in the hospital's prison until Yuan Shi exploded there before escaping, but was shot and killed by the already crazy Xiao Shifan at the time. Evidence was destroyed. The replica also burned to ashes in the explosion, and no one except Xiao Shifan could clearly describe what had happened there. So, I promptly notified Kong Si to leave and create suspicion to distract Xiao Shifan. Later, when Xiao Shifan asked me, he also gave him as much information as possible to make him exhausted. I think you won't have many opportunities to contact him after that. Cheng Wuling explained. That's tough enough. Yin Luo licked his tongue. From a god's perspective, Lu Ning now understands these things, but it would be more realistic for the parties involved. Lu Ning nodded. Next, it's time for Yin Luo to speak up. I didn't make much appearance in the main text, so I didn't pay much attention to this line. Although I didn't make much contribution, that's all, Yin Luo thought for a moment before saying, first of all, those families are all smoke bombs. Except for me, the other families are basically infiltrated and can't be counted on. In addition, my line is related to the supernatural association in nearby street thugs and vendors. As shown on the surface of this scene, there are actually many strange people and scholars. I can directly follow He Nianqing's route to contact the supernatural association, and also use the power of the Yin family to demand some hermits to help me with things. But I chose the first one, and the result was like that. Can't we all choose? I can't, because it takes time to persuade the hermit and persuade the supernatural association, both of which require me to personally present evidence, and the scene task also limits time. The two conflict. In fact, if it can last for 40 days, I can mobilize both sides. Yin Luo shrugged, this choice seems to be wrong. Yes, one reason is that I can also reach the association through this line on my end. Lu Ning said, the second reason is that the supernatural association belongs to the solving department rather than the prevention department. The reason why they haven't taken action in recent years is because there is no conclusive evidence to prove that there are abnormalities happening here. There are regulations that prohibit interference in affairs between ordinary people. If it weren't for Pei Xian's freedom to send people to attack this time, they wouldn't have had a reason to take action. I later discovered it too, but at that time everyone was focused on the hospital's issues. At most, I only provided clues but could not direct them, and it was difficult to explain anything else. Yin Luo sighed. Also, there are important clues that were missed in this scene. Lu Ning knocked on the table, and 5 buildings appeared in the image. Most people's attention has been drawn to the phenomenon of strange tales of 7 nights, including myself. Therefore, a large portion of the clues have not been investigated, so let's list them here for now. The real clues in the top 10 strange rumors of Danma. The cursed clock of the Clock Memorial Hall. It is necessary to infiltrate the Memorial Hall at midnight, and then pass 4 times in front of the large clock deep inside the memorial hall to enter a state of time confusion, and return to normal at 5 a.m. This method can be obtained by searching for the notes of the first director in the library. People who experience the curse clock will inevitably wake up in front of the memorial clock at 5 a.m. the next time they fall asleep, covering all the temporal and spatial constraints in the scene. The blank history of the History Museum. Among the various exhibits displayed in the Danma Local Museum on the 3rd floor of the museum is a bird atlas, with double-dot layer pages that record detailed information about the UFO crash in the past according to the page numbers. The information about the double-dot layer pages of the book is directly marked on the instruction board outside the showcase, and the donation year is consistent with the year the UFO fell, making it the only exhibit donated in that year. A ghost party held at the clock tower. Every day at 6 p.m. and 12 p.m., the clock tower is surrounded by yin qi. If you stand at the top of the clock tower at this time, even without the help of a spiritual eye like Lu Ning, you can still see abnormal qi. This rumor is well known in Danma, but the clock tower is locked layer by layer and can only be accessed by finding the administrator. The mirror of burning. Standing in front of the mirror, one can see that everything except oneself is burning fiercely. This mirror was collected by a hermit because it was considered ominous and did not see the sun. However, the history of the appearance of the mirror can be traced from the records, as well as the name and address of the hermit can be found in the auction records. The burning things in this mirror will reveal their true appearance. Disaster telescope. This telescope is located at the Danma Mountain Observatory. If one is fortunate enough to bypass the attack of the mountain servants at night, they can also see the future in parallel world scenes using that telescope, and the duration is determined by the viewer's energy. Only for tourists or superpowers, available from 11 p.m. to 3 p.m. It's not something that has direct destructive power. But it is very useful for information acquisition or life preservation. Finally, it is about the issue of shingling. When the UFO crashed, its self-protection program released the first batch of spores, which completed the first parasitism through visual media. Witnesses, investigation teams, and the military were all infected at the time. However, these spores only served to guide the host to pursue the star spirit and serve it after fully growing, but if not found for a period of time, they will die together with the host. This situation will continue along with the bloodline. Lu Ning began to recreate the background story of the entire scene. Following closely behind were the release of servants and a second erosion, with a portion of the team responsible for chasing servants being replaced by predation and another portion being parasitized by spores. At this point, the first stage of defense has been completed, and these first batch of servants, due to their age being too old, did not have the opportunity to participate in the star spirit resurrection plan. Therefore, they lurked in the local area as humans and even gave birth to offspring. Among the pursuers, Sun Maju and Zhao Yinran are such mixed-race descendants. Their task includes finding the truth about their own bloodline and standing in line when necessary. Yes, the secrets of these two people include changing their own camp at some point, but unfortunately their ultimate choice is still to stand on the side of humanity, Cheng Wuling added. Next came the subsequent gene collection and cultivation, which lasted for a long time and went through several generations of failed works, namely the birth of the shadow sun. Finally, about 20 years ago, the cultivation project for the heavenly sun was completed, and most pre-cultivated defective replicates provided protection for it. During this period, the young pastor Paradel of the church accidentally saw the servants there, as well as Yu Chan, who could command the servants. His faith gradually changed due to contamination, and the church became another large sanctuary besides the hospital. All members of the church are still human, but the gods they believe in have long been transformed into star spirits. So this pollution is really. Yin Lian frowned. Bloodline and spirituality. The star spirit itself is a kind of anomaly. Ordinary people will be automatically counterattacked and injected with spores just by peeping, and directly seeing its body will also suffer huge soul trauma. If tourists do not detach but unfortunately see the star spirit, it will probably increase a lot of soul damage. Lu Ning shook her head. Although servants do not have such a strong effect, living in places where servants reside for a long time can also be affected, such as the hospital director. And by the time we arrived at the scene, it happened that Xingling was planning to leave here, Yin Luo summarized. The conflict between the two sides also arose at this moment. Judging from Lu Ning's observation of the future, although the supernatural forces in Danma could prevent the spread of the disaster, Danma had to be destroyed. That's not necessarily true. If you had guessed our identity or intentions in advance and established a relationship with Tan Chong and Qin Shui, you could go directly to Bird's Nest Lake to destroy the UFO. We have no way, said Cheng Wuling. That really requires the ability of a prophet to do it. Lu Ning waved her hand and wiped away the image on the table. That's all for the bigger questions in the second volume, and you can bring up anything else. Next. The icons of the two shelters slowly appeared. A difficult hunting mission. The other four took out scene records one after another. Many parts of this scene are from Lu Ning's perspective, and there are actually no other issues that need special attention, Ling Yan said first. So I don't intend to invite guests, but this time I can invite someone to come out and talk. So. First of all, the house where you were attacked by bald heads when you went out at night was repaired by Zhang Nian. Yin Lian asked. Well, based on the hints behind it, it can also be seen that this is not difficult, right? Although investigating along this clue can also reveal Zhang Nianqiu's experience and lure him to control Sanctuary number 33, the sanctuary cannot withstand the fierce attack of the evil claw no matter what. Lu Ning said, I'm curious about how you will deal with this situation. This question is asked by Yin Lian and Cheng Wuling. I would probably take the path of taking power, starting when there were fewer people. The people in shelter number 33 were initially quite obedient, and it would take about 1 or 2 days to reorganize the structure. At least Zhang Nianqiu's patrol team has a relatively strong quality. I just need to find a dozen or so teammates, Cheng Wuling said indifferently. It's too troublesome to talk about the people in these scenes. I'm not interested in collaborating with those who can't understand and cooperate. Join a shelter, search for supplies during the preparation period, and also inquire about the weaker positions of the Evil Claw army. Then take someone north, both of them said at the same time. Ah. There is no restriction on the range of movement in this map scene, Yin Lian knocked on the first chapter's task. Since we know that the shelter cannot be preserved, we won't defend it. Pulling live forces for migration is the best choice, just like the teams that came later. At least the team they pulled won't have much objection in terms of action. The two shelters are close to the south, so there must be a large base in the north. You can always encounter them along the coast, and even if you encounter evil claws on the way, you can complete the task. Cheng Wuling nodded. In addition, the path of the dragon-shaped evil claw also runs from south to north, but the deviation from the route will become greater as the distance increases. Didn't you just end the blizzard after 1 or 2 days? Although this weather is more difficult, survival is not a particularly big problem. Finally, from any perspective, ambushing and chasing soldiers is easier for well-prepared teams. Evil claws are not all creatures that move in a team, and many of the creatures you hunt can be ambushed and killed on the road. It's even better not to pursue them. Cheng Wuling turned her head and glanced at Lu Ning. This is probably the way we would choose, right? Upon careful consideration, Lu Ning realized that this did not conflict with the task instructions at all. But what's curious is, from your god's perspective, how did Yun Jiao solve those giants? Yin Lian asked. Well. Let me tell you. Lu Ning waved her hand and Yun Jiao appeared on one side of the wall. There's a swamp over there, Yun Jiao snorted against the wall. Did you specifically call people over for this? Haha. After all, you're just a character who takes on the plot in this volume. Lu Ning smiled, but let's just say that Yun Jia is the most powerful among all the tourists in the first 3 volumes, not to mention various bonuses. Oh. I thought Sun Maju was the first. Cheng Wuling was surprised for a moment. After all, he can leave scars on Pei Xian, who is in an extraordinary state. If you take it seriously, you won't be able to beat Sister Yun. But the use of force in most scenarios is not particularly great. Yun Jiao shook her head and said, no matter what kind of training it is, it will ultimately be at the level of humans, and most of our enemies are supernatural forces. In their eyes, the strength of a trained warrior and a powerless scholar is at the same level. Running faster than his teammates is enough, Yin Luo joked. The most important thing is to make good use of various clues in the scene to improve one's own strength. Those who use force to break the situation are also those who are good at using the power in the scene, rather than just knowing that they are foolish in practicing. Yun Jiao glanced at Lu Ning and said, next time, it's better to invite me formally, otherwise I won't come. Yes, yes. See you later, Sister Yun. Lu Ning waved her hand and Yun Jiao disappeared indoors. Afterwards, Lu Ning continued to say to the crowd, besides Zhang Yanxiu, the scene also provides another opportunity to control the shelter. That old man's convoy, right? Only Lin Qi walked this line among you. Yin Lian flipped through a book. Yes, the team led by the old man has strong unity and combat effectiveness. Even after the shelter fell, they still managed to escape in most intact ways. If they can do a good job in socializing, the old man will also provide you with detailed information about some evil claws in the west. Even before the blizzard arrives, they can conduct a cooperative hunting, which is probably the best opportunity to complete the task in the entire scene. It's post-event intelligence again, Ling Yan raised her eyebrows. After all, no one was able to do things so comprehensively at that time. At least in terms of the outcome, it was a success. At least as someone who was solely responsible, I also tried many things that I didn't know how to do before, such as giving orders and so on. To be honest, taking on someone else's life and death is really heavy. Are you worried that your commands will lead to the death of others? Cheng Wuling asked. It will happen, won't it? I believe you will be mentally prepared, and your command is more about ensuring that others do not die. You need to change your thinking direction. Yin Lian said, also, there is no need to handle things in every detail, as it is easy to make mistakes. A person's thinking is difficult to cover all aspects no matter what. Believe in your teammates, and also trust your opponents, Cheng Wuling continued. Wow! You two snatchers. I dare say so. Lu Ning knocked on the table. Tell me here, I won't know about the plot either. I don't know how I will develop in the future, don't forget it. Sorry. Then I wish you all the best in the plot. It's time for me to say goodbye, isn't it? Yin Lian finished her drink and stood up. Yes, we should go now, Ling Yan agreed. Cheng Wuling. She won't always be next to you. This road is always walked alone. If we haven't finished walking, then you can take 2 more steps forward. Yin Luo chuckled and stood up again. 3 people waved their hands one by one, and their figures gradually disappeared into the tea room. Lu Ning's expression returned to tranquility. A bit disappointed. For me, separation is forever, while reunion is temporary. Well, it's good to know. Cheng Wuling put down her teacup and looked outside. Although it is a transparent glass window, the outside world is a vast expanse of white. I'll probably be away for a while too, right? People gather and disperse, I hope we can still have such a pleasant meeting next time. Yes, Cheng Wuling nodded and slowly disappeared. The last bit of hot air lingering in the cup gradually merged into the air and disappeared. Tea party. End. Lost chapter attempts to save. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Now, let's try the related works of Invincible and see if they can be released. Also, please help me check where the violations are. I can't find them. Equals 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 Tang Yuanzhen is a person who studies ghosts, which is no longer a secret. Lu Ning was actually mentally prepared before coming down, but when she really heard this sound, she still felt her hands and feet cold. Don't be afraid, isn't it that there are only 3 ghosts? None of them can be here now, Ling Yan comforted in a voice. I understand in my heart, but... Instinctively. Lu Ning smiled bitterly, feeling a bit strange about her fluctuating fear. She wouldn't have been afraid when she saw someone killed by a ghost before, but when she faced the ghost directly, she had an obvious fear reaction. What was the problem with her? Instinct is something to overcome. Ling Yan tightened her grip on Lu Ning's hand, and the warmth in her palm also made Lu Ning feel a little more at ease. Finally, it has come to an end. A red wooden door with a handle in the shape of a fierce beast. This door can be easily opened by anyone because its function is not to prevent people, but to prevent ghosts. Wood is soaked in blood. To be honest, we can withstand the attack of ghosts by simply dismantling this door. Legend has it that wood made from the blood of 30.3 criminals mixed with the blood of 5 fierce beasts, including lions, tigers, wolves, and leopards, is not the king of ghosts who dares not approach. Lu Ning opened the door and looked at the wooden door with envy. But still that sentence, it's been too long. The lifespan of any magical tool is limited, and the same applies to blood-soaked wooden doors. As the time is unknown, Lu Ning has no way of knowing how effective the door is. If it is useless to the ghosts in the villa, this thick wooden door can actually drag herself to death. Anyway, let's go first. The room was pitch black, and with the help of their phones, they found several candlesticks to light up, which allowed them to see the detailed situation inside the room. There are 3 laboratories in total, and the outermost area where the 2 people are located is filled with bottles, jars, scrolls, books, and various strange decorative sculptures. Fortunately, the space is very spacious, although messy, there are many places to stay. Ling Yan picked up 2 bottles and carefully looked inside, which were already clumps of pigment-like things, unable to distinguish what they were originally. The scroll and books have turned yellow, and if held too hard, they will break into pieces. Lu Ning approached the second room. This seems to be a dedicated place for rituals, with a small altar built under a wall. The wall above the altar is painted with a coat of arms, roughly a drop of crimson blood falling on the root of the plant. From the root, 2 vines grow in a circular shape to wrap around the blood, and the tips of the vines intertwine and twist into an inverted pentagram shape. Devil. Lu Ning did not see any records about this emblem, and could only roughly judge from the inverted pentagram that it was probably related to demons. However, she had not studied these, and no more would reveal it. As it was a ceremonial room, the surroundings were cleaned very clean, and only a few large wide-mouthed bottles were used in the corner to hold some commonly used ceremonial materials. Lime, salt, blood, metal powder, crystal, and unknown black powder. Blood is naturally unusable for a long time, but the other materials are well preserved. Another room inward will be the work area. A corpse that had turned into white bones sat upright on a slightly decayed Grand Tutor's chair, with hands resting on the armrests and head slightly tilted to the side. It was unclear what kind of force was still maintaining the integrity of the entire body. Bai Gu was dressed in a black tang suit, and although he could no longer see his demeanor during his lifetime, the remaining aura still made one feel the majesty of the past. On a long table in front of Bai Gu, there were a large number of books, including a large number of books that were exactly the same as the diary books that Lu Ning had read. A piece of parchment was spread out on the table, padded with a torn page from a notebook. To the right was a dried ink bottle inside, and a carefully decorated feather pen was casually placed inside, with the tip of the pen solidifying with the ink. Across the table are 2 experimental tables, one empty and the other with a huge black glass box, through which a camera-like object can be barely seen. Finally, there is a row of storage cabinets facing the door. The sturdy wooden doors are already somewhat worn out, but overall they are still intact, with each cabinet locked with copper locks. Lu Ning walked over to study, turned around, and reached out her hand to the body. Click. Just as Lu Ning was preparing to look for the key, Ling Yan casually pulled off a lock and the lock buckle. This won't have any bad impact, will it? Ling Yan quickly flicked the open door and with a soft sound, the wooden door opened, but nothing strange came out from inside. No, look for it right away. The blood of the divine bird should be contained in a bottle. Lu Ning immediately threw the body aside and began to forcefully dismantle the lock of the storage cabinet. Quickly, a white porcelain narrow-necked bottle with a short forearm and an unknown material was flipped out by two people from a large number of bottles and jars. The bottle mouth was actually plugged with a spiral cork, and after twisting it open, a faint smell of fishy and woody smell emanated from inside, which was not unpleasant. On the contrary, it also boosted the spirits of those who smelled the smell. That's it. Lu Ning felt a sense of joy in her heart. This bottle looked quite substantial. According to Tang Yuanzhen's account, as long as blood was bathed throughout her body, it could temporarily revive the deceased. This effect would definitely be surprisingly effective at critical moments. Among the 15 collectibles, only the blood of the divine bird was not described in pictures. Based solely on the description in the text that it has strong vitality and activity, and only the scent of breathing can relieve fatigue, full of the magic of nature, Lu Ning thought it was so difficult to find them. Of course, another thing she knows how to use cannot be missed, which is naturally the camera locked in a black glass box. This camera can capture the past, even though it was only an hour ago. It is a true good thing. As long as it is there, the double ghost killing will inevitably be even more difficult. Although the lock of the glass box is more sturdy than the storage cabinet, it was finally violently opened after Ling Yan and Lu Ning had been tinkering for a long time. However, the biggest problem is that these two collectibles are too large. In the past, cameras were shoulder-mounted cameras that were not lightweight and could not be hidden. The length of the bottle of the divine bird's blood also made it impossible for the two to place it in any secret place. It's not that they don't want to share, but these two collections with significant practical effects are likely to cause greater chaos. Considering what may happen later, Lu Ning and Ling Yan agreed to let everything develop steadily first. The last two collections are placed in the most prominent places on the table, namely the notebook page on parchment paper and the feather pen in the ink bottle. At this point, Lu Ning has already confirmed one thing. This travel brochure is indeed not something that originally existed in the villa. She took out the introduction booklet that each person had initially been assigned to, opened the collection, and found the page marked with the item, pain memory, which was exactly the same as the notebook page in front of her in the picture. However, the symbols and magic circles on the notebook were completely copied from parchment, which means that only the notebook page is something that has an effect. Ling Yan, we need to read all the diaries here as well. Lu Ning picked up a diary and handed it to Ling Yan. It may include the functions of the last few collections, as well as some Tang secrets. I think this information may be helpful to us. Okay, let's start now, Ling Yan agreed and spread out her diary on the table, flipping through the pages with her phone. Equals 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 equals. After a long time, the two finally achieved some results. The missing parts of the diary upstairs have almost been filled in here. Firstly, between the ages of 30 and 40, Tang Yuanzhen traveled abroad and made many friends in the field of mysticism, both domestically and internationally. Among them, a young man named Joseph was the most prominent. He was rescued by Tang Yuanzhen in a shipwreck and had an unparalleled passion and vitality for mysticism. Due to his handsome appearance, he was treated as half of his disciple by Tang Yuanzhen, who emphasized his looks. The two of them walked together for nearly 2 years, and the diary records almost all of their creative ideas along the way. However, 2 years later, Joseph had to go back to inherit the title, and the two parted ways. Then, in his 40s and 50s, Tang Yuanzhen returned to his long-lost family and revitalized the Tang family with knowledge of mysticism. Around the age of 40.5, the Tang clan held an annual collection exchange conference. In addition to Tang Yuanzhen's collection of treasures, there were also people from all over the world who came here to showcase and trade them. The gathering of the Tang family became one of the leading mysterious side exchange events in China 5 years later, and it was also at this time that the development of the Tang family reached its peak. However, the biggest problem has arisen, which is the heir. The Tang family, which gathered in the form of a clan, naturally selected successors from within. However, after Tang Yuanzhen, a genius, the entire clan surprisingly did not have anyone who could stand up to inherit the mystical tradition. Tang Yuanzhen's eldest son was not close to his father and left home early to work alone. The second son has mediocre talent, and his daughter Tang Yuexin is the only Tang family member who can barely learn from Tang Yuanzhen. There is no need to say much about the other children. So, Tang Yuanzhen, who was over 60 years old, thought of his old friend Joseph, who was far away in a foreign country. Now this young man from that time has become a very prestigious count, and his mystical knowledge is also different from before. After receiving Tang Yuanzhen's letter, he immediately set off and appeared in front of Tang Yuanzhen within 3 days. There's something wrong with the diary here. When Lu Ning and Ling Yan saw this part, they also discovered some traces in their diary. Opening ceremony. You are listening at Novel Full Audio. The gloomy sky is filled with large clouds, blocking the light of the sunrise. The unique moisture and scent of vegetation in the forest permeate the air, but it is difficult to enjoy the morning air due to a faint smell of decay. 30 people stood in front of a huge rusty iron gate, and in front of them was a huge estate with the characteristics of any house you could imagine from a horror movie. The Western-style decoration gradually decayed and faded in the wind and rain for an unknown amount of time, revealing speckled deep red and almost blackened wooden structures under the peeled paint. At first glance, it was as if blood had splattered, ferocious and glaring. What is this place? When I opened my eyes, I found myself in such a strange place that anyone would feel a hint of panic to some extent. Lu Ning instinctively reached into her pocket and took out her phone to see the current time. This is not very useful, it's just an instinctive reaction, and among the people present, a few of them also made the same action. No signal, as if it were a natural outcome, the large exclamation mark in the signal column and the 3 characters next to it were the standard features in such a scene. Lu Ning's gaze shifted slightly and she found that a countdown number was beating instead of the position that should have displayed the current time. 167.58.32, 7 days. What does that mean? As Lu Ning muttered to herself, she unlocked her phone. Without a signal, most functions couldn't be used, but at least there were some uses. A new message reminder. Lu Ning lifted her head, feeling a bit confused. Without a sense of time, it felt very bad. She also felt that her memory was a bit fragmented. Not only did she come here, but there seemed to be something in her past memories that she couldn't remember no matter how much she thought about it. When you think more, you will feel bored and nauseous. She interrupted her recollection and clicked on the text message. If the system time ran out, at least the time would be indicated in the text message, which is also a good reference. Next, Lu Ning's eyes suddenly widened. Dear Sir/Madam, dear tourists of Ghost Villa, this message will be sent on time upon arrival. Please do not reply. The goal of this journey is to survive within the villa for 7 days. Please do not attempt to move away from the villa. For the sake of your health, please follow the tips in the travel manual. This prompt. 1. There are 3 ghosts in the Ghost Mountain Villa. 2. There are means to fight against ghosts and monsters in the Ghost Mountain Villa. 3. For the first 3 hours, ghosts were unable to kill. 4. Please be good at utilizing your peers. Additional hints about ghosts. 1. Every 24 hours, a day, each ghost can only kill one person. 2. Will unlock prompt in 1 day, wishing everyone a pleasant journey, no signature. Lu Ning didn't immediately consider whether this was a prank or something, but instead looked up at the other people who took out their phones. There were first and then, but everyone showed a panicked expression, and a young man shouted out loud. "What kind of thing is this?" The youth caused quite a commotion. Some people didn't take it seriously, some were surprised and even took out their phones. Soon, almost everyone knew the content of the messages received on their phones. Don't panic, everyone. Just as people were feeling anxious, a young woman in a suit, seemingly a professional woman, stood up and loudly suppressed the noisy voices. It's not advisable to panic until everything is clear. Let me ask first, don't everyone remember how they got here? No one answered, but many people nodded. So, let's compare and see if the messages we receive on our phones are consistent. Is there no time to display them? Hey! What are you doing this for? Shouldn't you leave this damn place quickly now? A man with a quick temper spat on the ground in dissatisfaction. I don't care about this kind of pretentious thing. But you didn't run away immediately, which means you still have doubts in your heart, the woman in the suit said without hesitation. Since that's the case, now everyone should confirm that everything they know is adults, and at least show their rationality. The irritable man cursed, but did not refute. This time everyone started comparing the content on their phones, and Lu Ning also compared it with an elderly man with white beard and a chubby and strong man next to them. Finally, it was confirmed that everyone received the same information. In that case, let's go in, the woman in the suit pondered for a moment before saying. Hey, it says there's a ghost. Are you mentally ill and going inside? The irritable man couldn't help but say. The woman in the suit smiled and didn't get angry. If what the text message said is true, then if we stay away, we will encounter some unexpected situations. If what is said above is false, entering is not a bad thing. Of course, I won't force anyone, and it's okay if you're willing to stay here. After saying this, she turned around and headed towards the villa. Wait, I'll go too. It's better to have more people. Lu Ning also took a step forward and walked into the estate with the woman in a suit. As more and more people followed, only the irritable man and a couple stood outside. Well, brother, you see, although we also think you make sense, there should be a little more people, okay? The man in the couple forced a smile at the irritable man, and then walked into the estate with the woman. The irritable man cursed at the sight, but he didn't dare to leave on his own. He followed behind and walked into the estate. After entering the estate, there is a decayed garden, and a large 3-story building stands at the end of the main road. However, from the small paths left on both sides, it can be seen that there should be other houses and facilities behind the building. Sister, don't we get to know each other with so many people? A young man dressed in a trendy and handsome appearance, but slightly slick, approached the woman in a suit walking at the front and asked with a playful smile. 30 people, we hardly know each other, and even if we introduce them once, we can't remember them. It's better to gradually get to know each other later to avoid wasting time, the woman in the suit replied calmly. It makes sense, but why are you so familiar, sister? Even though we just arrived, we were all in a panic. I won't let any factors make me lose my sanity. Overcoming emotions like fear is enough. Besides, you're not that afraid, are you? The woman in the suit glanced at the young man. Really? The young man walked a little slower and distanced himself. Little sister is really a formidable person. Thank you very much for your praise. At this moment, they had already walked to the door of the 3-story estate. The woman in a suit reached out and twisted the door handle, which had already turned blue-green. With a creaking sound, the door was easily opened. Lu Ning originally thought she would smell the smell of mold, but surprisingly, there was no signs of decay in the room. Although some things did lose their luster due to their age, they were still intact. Behind a short porch is a grand banquet hall that can still be seen with a golden and magnificent feeling. The huge square table covered with white tablecloths is neatly arranged with exquisite mahogany armchairs. The retro-style giant chandeliers illuminate the entire hall bright and warm, and the wooden floor makes a slight noise when stepped on, making people feel very comfortable. Wow, it looks very beautiful. Someone couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, and a little girl about the same age as Lu Ning even ran in and passionately stroked the decorations in the room. A group of people rushed in, and the woman in a suit walked directly to the dining table. Apart from a few empty vases used to press the tablecloth, the most prominent thing on the table was probably a pocket booklet in front of each seat. Lu Ning picked up a copy casually and opened it. It was really like a travel manual. The name of the estate is Green Pine Mountain Estate, established by a collector who enjoys European architecture and has the surname Tang. There is not much introduction to the history of the villa in the manual. Instead, Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net mentions a large collection of items that Mr. Tang has placed in the estate. The most valuable thing is probably the overall map of the villa attached at the end. Among the 3 floors of the main building, the 3rd floor is used by the Tang clan. Some rooms on the 2nd and 1st floors are used for entertaining guests, and the rest are places like kitchens. Of course, this main building also has a basement, which serves as a warehouse and a dedicated area for power generation and supply. There are also things behind the main building of the estate, in addition to another garden, a small house specially built for gardeners, an independently designated plantation, a large shooting range, and stables. In short, most of them are functional buildings used outside. Everyone take one, let's explore now. But I hope at least 3 people work together to avoid any danger, said the woman in a suit. Exploration. The irritable man picked up a booklet. Aren't you afraid that ghosts will suddenly come out and kill you? Just in case, I hope everyone will come back here in 2 hours to discuss their findings. The woman in the suit finished speaking and suddenly realized that everyone present had silently huddled together. Starting from comparing the information content with each other before, the people who had communicated stood together. Even the irritable man had the same couple and a man with dyed hair next to him. On the contrary, there was no one around her who had always been in the dominant position. Why don't you come with us? The sturdy man on Lu Ning's side touched his head and smiled somewhat foolishly. The woman in the suit looked over here and suddenly closed her eyes and smiled, thank you very much. Everyone quickly found the team, pieced it together, and finally formed 8 small teams, each heading towards the place of interest. Lu Ning and his group of 4 walked directly upstairs to the room where the Tang clan people lived on the 3rd floor. Bertongs. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Unlike the bright hall on the 1st floor, the wall lights on the 3rd floor are dim and yellowish. At this time, it is still good to have light shining in outside the window. If it were at night, the visibility would probably be quite poor. During the process of going upstairs, the 4 people also introduced themselves to each other. The name of the woman in the suit is Yin Lian, a young entrepreneur. She didn't say much about the specific situation. In my memory, before coming here, it should have been the company about to go public and a few co-entrepreneurs celebrating together. The old man's name is Gong Sunyu. Although he looks old, he is only 56 years old this year and his health is not particularly good. He is a professor in a university and an expert in ancient Chinese. His mind is still very clear. The chubby and strong man's name is Shi Song, an illustrator. His parents have both passed away and he lives with his younger sister. Although he may seem a bit straightforward on the surface, he actually has good emotional intelligence and is very polite to others. Finally, there is Lu Ning. I am a college student in my sophomore year, majoring in science and engineering. I don't really enjoy sports, but my body should be pretty good, said Lu Ning. At least if there is really a ghost, I will run very fast. Shi Song laughed heartily and said, "Don't worry, if that's really the case, I'll run on your back. I'm a flexible fat guy." "Thank you, but let's prioritize saving our lives when the time comes," Lu Ning said sincerely. Gong Sun stroked his beard and coughed, "Not to mention whether the claim of ghosts and monsters is true, there are rules of 3 ghosts in 7 days, as well as opportunities for survival. As long as you avoid them properly, there should be no danger." Mr. Gong Sun is right. The rules also say that there is something in the house that can resist ghosts and monsters. If we can find it now, it will be easier later on, Shi Song agreed. Yin Lian nodded and then said, "But we don't know how many of these things are, and what they look like. If we want to know, the most likely place to receive information is the place where the owner of the house used to live." "No." Lu Ning took out the booklet, opened a page, and showed it to the 3 people. "Don't you think it's strange? If this manual is about introducing background information, what is the purpose of such a long paragraph about the collection?" Yin Lian seemed to have noticed this earlier, while Shi Song and Gong Sun both showed a sudden expression. "Can we say that these collections can?" "Don't be too optimistic for now," Yin Lian interrupted Shi Song's somewhat excited words. "Besides, the collection recorded on it seems to be quite a lot, with only 15 in total, and their function is only resistance. If ghosts are real, you wouldn't think you could survive 7 days on these things, would you?" As they spoke, the 4 of them had already walked to the entrance of the study in the middle of the right corridor on the 3rd floor. "Pay attention to time and try to find valuable things." After speaking, Yin Lian pushed open the door. The study room is very large, with 6 bookshelves arranged neatly on top of a large L-shaped desk. Due to being unread for a long time, dust has fallen on the bookshelves. The books here seem to have been untouched for a long time, but the dust here seems to have only accumulated for half a year to a year, said Lu Ning, hesitating as she approached and wiped a little. "Oh. Can this be determined?" Yin Lian was somewhat surprised. "I'm not very accurate, as I've said before. I don't really like sports, and I only enjoy static activities such as playing chess and reading books. I also have some exposure to detective books." Lu Ning shook her head. "But I'm not a professional, I can only provide a reference at most." "Enough, there are many doubts here, we just need to remain vigilant. So, I'll start from here." Yin Lian pointed to the bookshelf farthest from the desk. "Let me find the desk." Lu Ning walked around to the back of the desk and found that there were also many drawers and small shelves under the desk. Shi Song chose the bookshelf behind his desk, while Gong Sun walked towards a row of bookshelves against the wall and chuckled, "I may not be able to help anything else, but I've been dealing with books for the rest of my life, so let's read more." After deciding on the location, the 4 of them quickly flipped through the boxes and cabinets. While searching for useful things, Lu Ning was also contemplating the current situation in her heart. After the initial panic, Lu Ning also drew some conclusions with a little observation. Firstly, the clothes on her body were a thin long-sleeved shirt with a commonly worn dark blue hoodie over it, and below were long woolen pants. These clothes were usually worn when the weather started to cool down in autumn, which did not match the season when her last memory had just returned to school when the summer heat had not yet dissipated. The rest of the people's clothes are mostly autumn clothes, except for a few young people who are also wearing short sleeves. Which is also in line with people's dressing habits when autumn just entered. In addition, there seems to be nothing lost on her body. Apart from her phone, there is also her wallet and keychain in her pocket. When she walked through the courtyard before, she quietly checked and found that there were over 200 yuan in her wallet, bank card, ID card, and even a supermarket receipt. In addition, there was a utility knife. Art knife. Lu Ning does have some handicraft hobbies, but she doesn't have a particularly deep impression of the way she doesn't seem to need to carry her own art knife. In addition, besides a cartoon character pendant, there are only 3 keys on the keychain, including the home, dormitory, and club activity room. These things are currently not very helpful. At this moment, at the bottom of the left drawer on the desk, Lu Ning found a glass box. The inside of the box is covered with a red velvet cushion to form a protective layer. In the middle, there is a golden portrait, only the length of a pen, connected to a square base. Through the glass, it can be seen that this is a person with both hands raised high, seemingly shouting something, but the workmanship is not particularly exquisite, and the facial features are completely indistinct. Although it appears to be a shoddy item at first glance, it is indeed one of the collectibles written in that booklet. Lu Ning immediately took out the things, flipped through the booklet, and found the page. Prayer for the Golden Statue. The collection that Mr. Tang Yuanzhen received when he was nearly 40 years old is said to be a ritual item used for praying for rain and offering sacrifices by a certain ancient tribe. It is quite spiritual and has the ability to suppress evil. It was exhibited at 2 Tang clan meetings. It is said that he was bought for 1,000,000 yuan, but Mr. Tang Yuanzhen couldn't bear to part ways, which is why he became famous, found it. Lu Ning showed a joyful expression and called the other 3 people over to study this golden statue together. At this point, no one cared whether this thing was an antique cultural relic, so they opened the box and took out the golden statue. It should be said that it is truly gold, with a heavy texture and no rust except for a slight dullness. It's very pure gold. Gong Sun Yu weighed it and handed it to Yin Lian. Take a look at this below. At this moment, Lu Ning noticed that the bases of the 4 directions were all painted with very complex patterns, with a great difference in accuracy from the rough and shoddy portraits on top, as if 2 craftsmen had fused them together after making them. Pattern. Is this thing still a seal? Yin Lian's thinking diverged quickly, and she was immediately reminded to think of it. Anyway, put it away first. If you find something, Lu Ning, I'll give it to you. Whether it's useful or not, it's recommended to use it to ward off evil and treat it as a life-saving item. Lu Ning hesitated for a moment and said, "Can I take it?" "But how does this work?" "Take it, whether you know how to use it or not, maybe you can use it. I found this thing." Yin Lian raised her left hand and revealed an old book. "This book?" Gong Sun Yu squinted his eyes and immediately shook his head when he saw the text on it. "Ah, the old gentleman may not know. The above is in Latin, and this is the original manuscript of Mensal's manuscript. Of course, I don't know who this person is, but this thing is also in the collection." Lu Ning immediately found that page. Mensal was a 17th-century black magician who was only well known in the industry and was skilled in offering and cursing black magic. His manuscripts recorded a large number of related magic, but unfortunately, whether this was true or not is unknown. Mr. Tang Yuanzhen claimed to have interpreted this manuscript, but the information recorded in it was too dangerous. He wanted to permanently seal it, and the manuscript was only displayed as a collection once. Perhaps some people still yearn for the knowledge in it to this day. That's a dangerous thing. Sher Song widened his eyes. Things only depend on how people use them, and we don't know how to use them at all. I don't know much Latin, so I can only try to see, Yin Lian said with some regret. Gong Sun Yu suddenly remembered something. So, the few ghost-like notes I saw may have something to do with this. Yin Lian's eyes lit up and she said, "Really? Let's go take a look." Meanwhile, the underground of the estate. "Master, isn't this very troublesome?" 3 men gathered in front of the generator, led by a middle-aged man with a flat head and beard. After inspecting the generator, Yu Yu's face slightly darkened as he read. Zhang Fuyuan is a mechanical engineer who is even more familiar with these cold iron guys than his wife. Therefore, he can easily see that the condition of the underground generator sets here is not particularly good, and about half of them are in danger of going on strike. The fuel is not particularly sufficient either. A young man said after checking. The diesel engine has this problem, we need to find a way to fix it. Zhang Fuyuan was interrupted before finishing his sentence. Master. When will all these machines have to be repaired? Who knows if there's a ghost in this damn place? Zhang Fuyuan glared at the young man with some annoyance and said, if you don't fix it, you may not be able to attract ghosts and monsters. If you're afraid, don't follow me. A reprimand immediately quieted down here. Yo, why are we arguing here? A group of people from the other side of the basement walked over. The largest group was still 5 young people, and the slick and handsome young man became the leader. The group walked unsteadily over. Is that you? How's the inspection at the warehouse going? Zhang Fuyuan frowned and asked. Uncle Zhang, don't be so serious. The good news is that the food reserves are sufficient and fresh. Of course, if you're not worried, there are also many canned goods. The only thing you need to worry about is whether a ghost will pop out when you come over to pick up the food. The young man said and made a face suddenly, with several people around him laughing happily. Don't take it lightly. The young man shrugged and said, it's not a big deal, uncle. That's our mentality. Laugh at the danger, right? That's right. How can we do without some courage? Zhang Fuyuan shook his head slightly and continued to check the condition of the generator. 3 intelligence summaries. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. 2 hours later, everyone returned to the lobby on the first floor. Lu Ning keenly noticed that after these 2 hours, many people's expressions had changed, including those who were worried, those who were inexplicably excited, those whose faces turned blue, and those who were arrogant. It seems that everyone has made a discovery, Lu Ning whispered. Everyone, don't talk yet, let me talk. Yin Lian whispered to the 3 of them, then quickly walked to the brightly lit area and said, everyone, since you all came back on time, doesn't it mean you trust me a lot? So, if you have any discoveries, why don't you exchange them? Humph, since you brought it up, shouldn't you say it first? The person who spoke this time was a man dressed in a very upstart outfit, dressed in a dazzling gold and jade decoration, even with a pigeon egg-sized pearl set on the collar. When combined, there was no beauty at all. At first, this person looked timid, but upon returning, he became particularly arrogant. The 2 teammates next to him also respectfully offered to him, not knowing what had happened. However, Yin Lian probably saw many troublemakers and her tone remained unchanged. It makes sense, so let's talk about our team's discovery. We checked the study, including the owner's room and a nearby reading room. The owner here should be someone who studies various ancient and modern witchcraft spells. I suspect that if the ghosts here really exist, they are also related to the owner Tang Yuanjin. In addition, we also discovered this. Speaking, Yin Lian took out Mensar's manuscript. This is one of the collectibles in that catalog, which records some black magic tricks that may be helpful to us, but they are all written in Latin. My Latin is only average, so it may be difficult to interpret. You can leave this to me. A woman wearing glasses spoke. I work as a translator and my proficiency in Latin is quite good. If you trust me, please translate for me. Of course. Yin Lian didn't hesitate at all and pushed the book over. Then I'll leave it to you. Please prioritize translating more useful sentences. The woman was surprised to see Yin Lian hand over the book to her so easily, so she nodded, and her teammates also showed an excited expression. Since that's the case, let me talk about my side as well. Zhang Fuyuan took out a cigarette and didn't light it, putting it in his ear and slowly said, I'm a mechanical worker, so I checked the condition of the underground generators. There are a total of 8 small generators in the basement, and the entire estate's power supply runs from here, burning diesel. Although it's not a problem yet, due to wear and tear on the parts, 4 of them are already running poorly, which means there may be a shortage of power supply in the future. In addition, the fuel is not enough to use for 7 days, only 5 days of quantity, which means we can either stop a few midway to make up for the quantity. Either prepare for 2 days without electricity. After a long conversation, Zhang Fuyuan pulled out a lighter, ignoring the somewhat surprised expressions in people's eyes. Don't be too surprised, everyone. I have good news here. There is plenty of food and water in the warehouse, and common ingredients are available here. In addition, there are also many tools and daily necessities that we can take as self-defense. The handsome young man grinned. Self-defense. Anti-ghost. The nouveau riche snorted disdainfully. Yin Lien just nodded and glanced, so, does anyone else have anything to say? Everyone looked at each other, and the irritable man scratched his head and stood up. I knew you had a problem with your brain. If you don't take a look at the structure of the house in this damn place first, there won't be any place to escape. We took a look at the house and its surroundings, drew a sketch, and Xiao Song took it out for them. The man who dyed his hair quickly took out a piece of paper from his pocket and placed it on the table. He redrawn a simple map of each floor of the house, and then marked with arrows big and small to indicate where there were obstacles, where things could be used, where to jump off, and many other important points to pay attention to. This move surprised many people. From the beginning, the irritable man and Yin Lien didn't deal with each other. Out of their calm trust in Yin Lien, they instinctively felt that the irritable man was the kind of brainless and violent person, and they didn't expect him to be so careful. Thank you for your hard work, Yin Lien said to the irritable man. That's all I care about here. If you can't escape, don't beg me. The irritable man snorted coldly. Yin Lien turned her gaze to another group of people. The three of them had been huddled in a corner since returning, their faces turning blue, indicating that something had happened. When people saw Yin Lien's gaze, they all looked over. One of the three, a man dressed as a white-collar worker, couldn't bear it anymore and shouted loudly, "What are you looking at? What's there to look at? We just want to know what you found." Calm down, Yin Lien said. Discovered. We didn't find anything. Damn it, why don't you pay attention to this useless thing and think about how to leave? Yin Lien pondered for a moment, then averted her gaze and looked at the other groups of people. The glasses woman group inspected the guest rooms on each floor. The first floor was a rudimentary room, while the second floor was more luxurious. The rooms were also equipped with a heater, a bathroom, and an old-fashioned TV, which was all covered in snowflakes and couldn't be used. There are single and double rooms, and the beds are enough for everyone to stay. There is no need to go up to the third floor. As for the nouveau riche, they just said with a disdainful expression that they had wandered around places like the kitchen and didn't find anything. The last group appears to have the highest combat effectiveness, led by a muscular man who is nearly 2 meters tall, a young man in police uniform, a young woman with cold eyes and bandages on her hands, and a man with a slightly hunched back but a sharp and agile appearance. My name is Hong Ziho, and I am a fitness coach. Our group went around the back and there were 3 people. The strong man pointed to the trembling white-collar man. We went to the gardener's cottage. It was probably something that scared them like that inside. As for us, we went to the target range and observation deck, but we turned around everywhere without weapons. Of course, even if there were any, it wouldn't be much use if I wanted to. If we walked inside, it would be a forest, and we weren't planning to go in. Is there anything worth noting over there? Yin Lien asked. There is a greenhouse with many flowers growing inside, which are not very common and we don't know each other. We can go and take a look later. Don't wait for a while, go now. The irritable man couldn't sit still. Yin Lien also agreed, that's right. By the way, let's see what scared the 3 of them like this. The sky was more gloomy than when I first entered the villa, as if there was an unusually heavy rain in the afternoon. The moisture in the air has become increasingly thick, and the temperature seems to have decreased slightly. It's not like it's been raining all these days, right? The girl who initially couldn't let go of the furniture in the room complained in a low voice, and the next nouveau riche let out a sneer. When you're about to die, you won't care about this anymore. You're a person. The girl raised her eyebrows as if they were about to erupt, but was held down by her teammate next to her. Don't argue, it's not worth it to be with this kind of person. Yin Lian heard the commotion behind her, but she didn't express anything, or rather she was too lazy to bother with their affairs anymore. Walking to the gardener's cottage, the wooden door was slightly open, and the soil on the ground was moist, with some scattered footprints visible. It was obvious that someone was very panicked and they ran out. Don't all go in. Yin Lian stood 3 meters away, stopped the people, and turned around to take a look. Who's going with me to take a look? I'll go in with you, Lu Ning said immediately. Hong Ziho also raised his hand and said, I'll go over too. I can protect you in case of any danger. And me too. The handsome man also leaned in. Yin Lian nodded to indicate that she had enough, then quickly walked to the door, reached out and quickly pushed it, while taking a step back to prevent something from suddenly coming out inside. Of course, there's nothing. Safe. Hong Ziho leaned over the door frame and looked inside, then walked in first. Although the gardener's cottage is a small house, there are also many rooms inside. The entrance is a small hall with a stove, the left hand connects to the kitchen, and there is a small miscellaneous room for tools. On the right side, there are 2 doors, which look like a bedroom. Apart from being slightly dilapidated, there is nothing strange in the small hall. However, as soon as Lu Ning walked into the room, she smelled a faint smell of decay, which still existed. Yin Lian quickly checked the small hall and found nothing strange. It seems that the problem is behind those 2 doors. I'll come this time. Hong Ziho walked up to a door and kicked it open. This time, the source of fear that made those 3 people finally appeared in front of the 4 of them. The traces of blood coagulation almost covered the entire room, even the ceiling was splattered with dark brown coagulated plasma. The thick curtains that blocked the light were pulled back a bit, and a pale light illuminated the shrunken and clumped human organs on the ground inside the room. 2 eyeballs were suspended from the chandelier, just looking in the direction of the door. The blood clots around a large humanoid mark on the bed were splattered with radioactive blood. Around this humanoid, it was unknown who drew a circle of blood on the sheets and floor, and at first glance, it was presented to everyone like a crude imitation of Leonardo da Vinci's The Vitruvian. Rao made sufficient psychological preparations, and such a tragic situation also had a great impact on people. Hong Ziho pressed his chest with an uncomfortable expression on his face. Yin Lian's breathing became rapid. The handsome man also put away his cynical attitude and looked into the room with some seriousness. Lu Ning stood at the door, unable to observe carefully under the poor lighting conditions. However, the impact of the bloody scene did not seem particularly strong for her. Although she was initially scared and took a step back, she soon felt no discomfort. Hey, what did you find? Someone shouted outside. I suggest those who are timid not to come in, Yin Lian replied and cautiously walked into the room, pulling open the curtains. If you have to describe it, it's probably because someone exploded on their own bed that they turned into this kind of thing. The handsome man deliberately amplified his voice so that people outside could also hear him. However, his description is indeed very accurate. Apart from the intentional blood circles and eyeballs, the condition in this room can really be inferred. It's been too long. Lu Ning crouched down and observed the blood and flesh on the ground, muttering to herself, the speed of blood coagulation is very fast, but organs and other parts have completely withered and shrunk. This can't be achieved in a few days. What about bones? Yin Lian suddenly asked. I didn't see it. Lu Ning glanced left and right. The blood volume in this room was enough for a person, but strangely, I didn't see any bones. In theory, even if it exploded into pieces, there should be some left, right? Isn't it strange? The handsome man walked to the bedside and carefully looked at the large humanoid bloodstain, touching his face to study. What's strange about it? Perhaps you don't play games much, but what about this scene? If you were to summon a skeleton from a corpse, that would be like this, wouldn't it? Fourth drop of blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brainstorming did not provide them with practical help, but rather caused even greater panic when the scene in the room was revealed. And some people really believed the man's words. Skull. Maybe this is a hint for us. Ghosts are skeletons, we can come up with a strategy or something. Will we also die like this? Damn it. Even if it's not a ghost, it's too scary to hide a murderer here. Yin Lien frowned and took out her phone to take a look. Without delay, take a look at the room next to you. In the other room, although it was not such a miserable situation, it could still scare many people. As soon as the door opened, you could see a corpse lying on a rocking chair, looking like a woman in her clothes, with a wax-like appearance all over her body. Her mouth was wide and dry, and a dagger was inserted into her right eye socket. Dry blood was left on both sides of her cheek, merging into several black lumps on and off the rocking chair. It's all turned into corpse wax. Lu Ning felt a bit strange. Corpses are usually more prone to decay, and the conditions for the formation of corpse wax are quite strict. However, this small house clearly doesn't look like it meets those conditions. Yin Lien quickly walked into the room and circled around, but couldn't find anything. Finally, her gaze fell on the body. Then, amidst the surprised gazes of the three, she reached out and pressed the head of the body to pull out the dagger. "What are you doing, Sister Yin Lien?" Lu Ning took a step back, and the other two men looked at Yin Lien as if they were looking at a monster. However, the person who made this terrifying move didn't care. He reached out and wiped two knives on the bedsheet, carefully observed the dagger, and then nodded, "That's right." Lu Ning immediately understood and took out an introduction booklet. The first item in her collection was an inconspicuous carved dagger, named the Sacrificial Dagger. The introduction stated that it was a weapon that had been blessed by some soul ritual and could absorb the souls of those killed by this dagger. After being collected by Tang Yuanjin, it was not publicly disclosed, only known to members of the family. But how did Yin Lien recognize it from the part where only the handle of the dagger was exposed? Feeling puzzled, Lu Ning also asked the question. "I have a good memory. I have memorized the names and shapes of the 15 collections, and if it weren't for the blurry introduction, I could even remember their functions." Yin Lien pulled off a piece of bedsheet, wrapped the dagger around her waist, and explained to the three people, "The collections may be useful. I don't need to say much, since I found them, I'll keep them." Lu Ning and the others didn't even think about grabbing, and nodded to show no objection. When leaving the gardener's cottage, there were still 15 minutes left after 3 hours. "Let's not go far, what if? What if we're attacked?" A man who looked extremely timid trembled as he was one of the 3 frightened white-collar workers. "Do you think it's okay to go back?" The irritable man snorted coldly. "If I say I want to leave, I'll completely go away. I don't want to stay in this damn place anymore. I still have to go to the greenhouse. If you want to go back, I won't stop you. I believe you all noticed a bit in the past 2 hours, but..." Yin Lien deliberately paused for a moment. "I advise you not to joke about your own life." "Humph. Who are you scaring?" "Old Lin, let's go back." The nouveau riche was the first to come out and sing a different tune, and then he walked towards the main house with his 2 followers without returning. The 3 white-collar workers were stunned and quickly chased after him. When 6 people took the lead, many people suddenly felt a sense of retreat. I think it's better for me to start translating as soon as possible, so I won't go with you guys," said the woman with glasses hesitantly. Yin Lien nodded and said, "Please." Zhang Fuyuan threw his finished cigarette onto the ground, glanced at the woman with glasses, and said leisurely, "Then let's also go back and see if there is any way to use the generator. If we can't help here, I won't get involved." 2 more groups of people left, and the rest of the group looked at each other, but it seemed like those with stronger combat abilities had all stayed here. "Isn't that too good?" The young police officer hesitated and said, "If they really encounter ghosts, there's nothing they can do. Xiao Lu, believe me, no one can do anything about it." Our physical strength only makes us the ones who run faster. Hong Ziho placed his hand on the police officer's shoulder and waved his other hand. Let's go, I'll take the lead. The location of the greenhouse was less than 100 meters away from the main house, and everyone rushed to the entrance of the greenhouse. Coincidentally, a few raindrops hit people's heads. Let alone the heavy rainstorm in the afternoon, it's starting now. The handsome man was in a high mood. The guy introduced himself on the way, skipped those bragging and boasting, and Lu Ning only remembered his name, Yu Jisong. It's not Gon Go Yu, it's you from January of the Blade Man. This person even emphasized, and Lu Ning reflected for a while before understanding which word he was saying. Not to mention these, after entering the greenhouse, everyone began to search for things. This time, due to the large number of people, the grouping was disrupted. Lu Ning and a cold-eyed woman in Hong Ziho's team discovered another collection in a small handicraft exhibition room, a wooden sword with carved patterns of gossip on its handle. It has become a habit for Lu Ning to check the manual when she has something to do, and now she has a vague impression of the things on it. When the woman took the wooden sword off a shelf, she immediately remembered this thing. The Bagua wooden sword was gifted to Tang Yuanzhen by an old Taoist friend as an exorcism tool. After all, Tang Yuanzhen often comes into contact with various domestic and foreign demons and ghosts, which inevitably taints him with evil energy. The main material of this wooden sword is peach wood, but it is also mixed with some special materials, making it have a certain effect of killing spiritual bodies. It is said that it has been used as a tool for 30 years before being gifted, and has great spirituality. Even for those without Taoist knowledge, it can be simple and practical. Good thing. The woman spoke, her voice quite pleasant, and there was a reassuring magic in it. Do you want it? The next second, the wooden sword was handed to Lu Ning. Lu Ning was stunned. The first one was Yin Lian, and the second one was her. How could she be so indifferent to something that could save her life? You should take what you found. Lu Ning shook her head and refused. Okay. The woman took off the matching scabbard, tilted her back behind her, and inserted the wooden sword into the scabbard with her backhand. Her movements were crisp and neat, exuding a graceful and beautiful charm. Well, including this woman who seems to have practiced kung fu, Hong Ziho's group of people probably have the strongest combat power and are sitting down. Lu Ning didn't know why she had some thoughts, so she quickly shook her head and said, Sister, have you practiced kung fu? My name is Lu Ning, let's get to know each other. Ling Yan, Ling Yan's Ling, the Yan's Yan, I am a martial arts passed down from my family and have declined. It seems that a bad topic was mentioned, which made Lu Ning stop talking. It's time. Ling Yan took out her phone and glanced at it. Lu Ning nodded. She had been keeping an eye on the time, but although the greenhouse was not particularly large, there were many small rooms, so she spent a lot of time searching. Everyone gather now. Outside, Hong Ziho's loud voice had already begun to urge, and the two of them quickly ran out. After the assembly was completed, everyone counted the number of people and there was no shortage, so they finally felt at ease. The wooden sword behind Ling Yan is naturally very eye-catching, but now everyone assumes that whoever finds it is the one who counts, and there is no objection to the allocation. Another discovery is that it is a decaying and withered model hand, which is too prominent even in the collection catalog, so naturally it has not been let go. This is also the only collectible that accurately introduces its effects. By inserting a candle in your hand and lighting it, it can alert you to the arrival of ghosts. It was the couple who discovered this, and now they have been guarding it from side to side and are ready to quickly find a candle to come out. Don't be so nervous, no one's grabbing you. Since this can serve as a warning, we just need to be next to you. Yu Jisong comforted the two overly nervous people with a smile. There are candles in the warehouse. There are several bundles of them. You can burn them for 7 days and tie them up. Relax a bit. Seeing that the people around, including the irritable man, showed no signs of greed, the two of them relaxed a bit. In short, what you gain is what you earn. The flowers in the greenhouse are not included in the collection. Since we have finished searching, we will go back and gather them immediately, said Yin Lian. This proposal is naturally not opposed by anyone. Finding so many things so early, as long as we understand the usage, we can probably play with ghosts for a walk in the future. 3 ghosts, we have 30 people. Yu Jisong began to be optimistic again for some reason. However, this optimism was shattered upon returning to the main house. The timid man who had been rushing to leave before had a purple-red pinch mark on his neck, his limbs folded back at a strange angle, his stomach cut open and half of his internal organs removed, and he died in the corridor leading to the toilet on the first floor. He said he was scared, went to the restroom, and then he didn't come back. The white-collar worker huddled in a chair, holding his arms only knowing how to tremble. The 3 members of the nouveau riche group were not in the hall, and the rest were only the last member of the white-collar group. A woman with heavy makeup sat on another chair, her eyes straight, and no one responded to anyone talking to her. A loud thunder accompanied by the noise of rolling rainstorm. The sticky and bloody smell lingering between the nostrils, with indescribable malice, declares the true existence of ghosts and monsters to everyone, and also signifies the beginning of this survival game. At this moment, a strong desire arose in Lu Ning's heart: I must live on. The first day of 5 fears. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The sound of heavy rain hitting the roof wall made a distressing sound. Lu Ning used to like rainy days, but now this rainstorm with heavy thunder can only increase her anxiety. Who discovered the body first? The white-collar worker pointed to the frightened woman and then continued to shrink. Upon seeing this, Yin Lian could only shake her head and walk towards the depths of the corridor. Wait. It could be very dangerous. Shi Song quickly called out to her. A ghost has already killed someone, and now my chance of hitting a ghost has decreased from 1 in 10 to 20.9. I don't think I'm so unlucky. Yin Liento walked into the corridor without looking back. Oh my, her courage is the biggest person I've ever seen, isn't it? Yu Jisong's mouth slightly raised, but that makes sense. Ghost killing has limitations, if that information doesn't deceive us. He didn't realize that his words had added a sense of terror to many people, so he thrust his hands into his pockets and walked towards the corpse. Lu Ning is also one of the more daring, and she realized that her fear of death was not so strong, so she also caught up with Yin Lian. The death of the body was quite tragic, and the man's expression appeared twisted and ferocious due to his neck being twisted. However, for the 3 people who had seen the situation in the gardener's cabin before, it was just more impactful. Many of the people who followed were scared and only dared to avoid coming from afar. Yin Lian squatted down and began to examine the body. Lu Ning also tacitly began to pull the clothes of the deceased, and their actions made the faces of the nouveau riche rushing towards them turn green. Are you perverts? There are still 2 ghosts who haven't killed anyone, so you're just casually flipping through the bodies of the deceased. Yu Jisong snorted. He had originally wanted to overturn something, but was snatched by Yin Lian and Lu Ning. He could only watch and then turned against the nouveau riche. Are you stupid? This guy was so scared that he wanted to run back and didn't even notice anything that could save his life. How could such a timid person leave the group and run out to the bathroom when time was approaching? Besides, what do you guys eat? You looked arrogant, but when you came back, the ghost killed one just as time was up. The nouveau riche is not a vegetarian either. He glared from a distance and shouted, what do you know, you little brat? Why do I care about this person's life and death? As long as he lives to the last 9 people, he is safe. Do you think I don't know? He's unlucky if he dies. This sentence immediately displeased several people, but the nouveau riche was quite disdainful. What kind of eyes do you have? Everyone is clear in their hearts, so don't pretend to work together. Kill 20.1 in 7 days, it's really an elimination game. I'm trying to protect myself from pushing you into the mouth of ghosts. Can I still be a savior bodhisattva? A group of hypocritical guys. Oh, hypocrisy. If we could fight against ghosts, because so many people would regret your negative attitude. A young woman in Yu Jisong's team also stood up and supported herself. That's right, what kind of attitude are you? Since you call us hypocritical, don't hide anything you find and speak up, the man in the couple mustered up the courage to say. The nouveau riche glanced at the people and said, haha. You want to provoke me. So what if I tell you? I have a pill in my hand that can make ghosts take a detour. Now you all look arrogant and ask me, even if I kneel on the ground and beg when I'm chased by ghosts, I won't give you a pill. Qingjing pill, as introduced, is a pill synthesized from the residue of Penglai's spirit medicine. It contains innate clear qi, just like deworming potion, which can emit a repulsive odor to ghosts. Just as the argument was about to escalate, Yin Lian spoke up. There is only one bottle and one pill on the introduction, but it seems that there are quite a few breath pills from you. Since you have confidence, I won't say anything. Just take this to keep yourself safe. If you can still live in 7 days, why don't you mock everyone again? What do you mean? What do you mean? Yin Lian's insightful words clearly made the nouveau riche feel a bit uneasy. You wouldn't think that making ghosts disgust is all good, would you? People can still eat things they don't like when they're extremely hungry, and ghosts go crazy. Humph. The nouveau riche turned pale and opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but still couldn't say anything. He turned around and ran back upstairs. Finally driven away. Yin Lian breathed a sigh, wiped the blood off the deceased's clothes, and then threw a lighter-sized object to Yu Jisong. Hey! This is... Yu Jisong copied it over and found it to be a wooden cylinder, with more than 10 circles engraved with unknown words on top. The bottom of the cylinder depicts the shape of a skull and a pentagram. The summoning catalog contains some unusual items that can attract ghosts to protect themselves. It is also said that many people have been killed by the summoned ghosts. This person may have wanted to bet on quietly summoning a bodyguard, but it is unknown whether they succeeded in being killed by the summoned ghost or were killed by the ghosts in the room without success. Yin Lian wiped her hands again, but found it difficult to wipe it clean. She frowned and looked around. Are you so confident with me? Yu Jisong smiled slightly. It's quite reliable for you. This certainly refers to the fact that Yu Jisong had also followed the investigation of the gardener's cottage before. Oh, I'll like you when you say that, little sister. I wouldn't like you if you said that. Where is there a place to wash your hands? Yu Jisong laughed heartily and waved his hand. I'll take you there, but since you think this thing's not good, why don't you keep it yourself? This question was actually meant for the onlookers to listen to. People like Lu Ning who had been searching with Yin Lian from the beginning already understood her thoughts. Don't put eggs in one basket. In the afternoon. Due to the appearance of the first deceased, after wrapping the body in sheets and placing it at the gardener's cottage, everyone gathered and counted the number. Currently, there are still 20.9 people. Another concern for Yin Lian is whether the soul summoning directory has been used before, and whether there are new ghosts here. After careful observation, the glassy woman gave a more affirmative answer, but it has not been used. The book records that if a similar item is used, the text on it will become blurry, which means it is disposable. Since this is still clear, it has not been used. It seems that the interpretation went smoothly, someone said. The glasses woman is also very confident. Except for some proprietary terms that may take some time to guess, the rest of the content is not difficult, but the whole book has a large amount of text, so I will first select the parts that look more useful to read. So, is there anything useful? Well, there's a part that introduces things about reverse rituals, but it's quite difficult to understand and I'll have to spend some time. At that moment, a few people pushed the dining cart back to the restaurant. Cooking became a challenge in such a situation, and in the end, the young woman in Yu Jisong's team, the woman in the couple, and Ling Yan said they could go and called on a few more people to fight, which formed the cooking lineup. Can't Lianjie cook? Lu Ning was a little curious. I usually don't take out or eat in a restaurant. I seldom cook by myself, and I never do anything except cooking and fried rice. Yin Lian studied the dagger while chatting with others. It's normal for a strong woman to not pay much attention in her life, Yu Jisong interjected. I pay close attention to my life and won't treat myself unfairly even when I'm busiest. Yin Lian seemed a bit unhappy, but only Lu Ning next to her could sense this emotion. And this lunch was just a variety of stir-fried dishes, as well as steamed rice in a large pot and sliced soy sauce. A person just died, and those who participated in moving the body only had an average appetite, and Yin Lian didn't eat much either. On the contrary, after the nouveau riche went downstairs, he started eating and drinking with his two followers. He was quite witty and didn't make any comments at this time, which also made lunch much easier. After lunch, everyone tidied up the utensils and spoke softly, as if the atmosphere had become more harmonious again. I want to take a shower. Someone suggested. Before moving the body out of the house, even if someone helped to hold an umbrella, many people got wet. Now it feels very uncomfortable to have clothes attached to them. Isn't it dangerous? Police officer Xiao Lu was a bit worried. Yin Lian shook her head and said, there are 2 bathtubs here. Just bring something with you when there are more people. Even if we don't do anything, the danger won't decrease. Wow, I thought you would definitely object. The first girl who entered happily grabbed the hand of the woman with glasses and ran upstairs together. What are they going to do? Yin Lian felt a bit strange. Zhang Fuyuan lit a cigarette and took a comfortable puff. You haven't looked at the room yet, have you? The room here is like a hotel, and everything is quite complete. They went to find a bathrobe. Master Zhang understands very well, Yu Jisong said with a smile. If you have a daughter, you have to understand, especially when you are particularly clingy to your parents. When Zhang Fuyuan spoke these words, his face softened a lot, as if recalling something beautiful. Yu Jisong grinned and said, then I'll join in the fun too. Anyway, if there are 2 pools, it's not a problem for men and women to separate. The leaders were all interested, and the young men and women in Yu Jisong's team couldn't help but go together. Lu Ning didn't go out with them, and it felt good that she didn't follow them. Except for Zhang Fuyuan and Yin Lian, a group of 3 members from the nouveau riche finished their meal and returned to their room. The white-collar men and women with heavy makeup also stayed in the hall and refused to run around without saying anything. The couple held on to their hand, inserted a candle, and didn't want to move, while the rest had some intention of cleaning up. Everyone, please divide them into batches, Uncle Hong. Could you please protect everyone? Yin Lian asked the most reliable group of people inside. Don't worry. Yin Lian looked at Shi Song and Gong Sun Yu again and said, let's go pick a room. Since there are double rooms here, it's best for us to act together at any time. At that moment of hesitation, I probably wanted to talk about team action, but it was unrealistic for so many people to be together at all times. Many people have some secrets, and the props that can resist ghosts have now become walls standing beside everyone, separating them. Is Yin Lianjie very worried about the future? When she went upstairs, Lu Ning asked, do you think everyone can't survive? No, there are other reasons why I don't want everyone to be together all the time. I have some guesses. Anyway, let's figure out how to use the things we have in our hands best now. The room on the 2nd floor is indeed luxurious in decoration, with a complete set of Western-style furniture decorations. The warm brown tone alleviates the gloomy feeling brought by the outside weather, and when the lights are turned on, it is also a bright white light source. Although Tang Yuanjun liked a retro style when building the mountain villa, he did not neglect the modern aspect. Lu Ning walked around the restroom and found that there was no bathroom, but there was already a flush toilet. In order to unify the style, the sink was actually designed in a style similar to a dressing table, with round mirrors embedded on the shelf, giving people a feeling from movies. Even Lu Ning, who had not studied much, loved this decoration style very much. Rich people, Lu Ning sighed after coming out. Yin Lian nodded and said, we already know that Tang Yuanjun is inseparable from these mysterious things. Such people are either extremely poor or have so much money that they burn their hands. Moreover, if it is true, then they are more likely to be an invisible wealthy person. This villa is probably the place where he devoted himself to studying those things. From what we have discovered, we can almost infer. Something's wrong with this place. Lu Ning, who is well versed in the theory of immortality, also guessed the plot. Just by collecting so many things related to mysticism here, one can see how many secrets there are. Later on, Tang Yuanjun definitely had something wrong that caused the villa to become the ghost it is now, and he himself probably wouldn't end up in any good situation.